Okay. Oh, folks, we're starting something brand new, at least for Josh Nelson. I've done this, I don't know, 147 times or so, live shows. I was just asking Josh, I said, have you ever been on a live show before? And what did you say, Josh?
Nope, never live.
Never live. But is your heart pumping? Is it are you nervous or are you fine?
Beating out of my chest, but no.
Because you're just talking to your buddy Kyle, right?
Yep, no big deal.
Folks, this is the Remodelers on the Rise show. I am your host, Kyle Hunt, and I have a friend and a client. Emphasize friend and client. You're both. Josh Nelson with Nelson Builders. He's located over in, if you're from Michigan, now if you're listening to this on the podcast, this won't be full effect. But if you're watching this live, if you just put your hand up, I suppose, like that. Josh is way over on the west side of beautiful Michigan in a lovely town called Holland. And what is Holland known for, Josh?
Tulip time.
Tulip time.
Dutch Tulip Festival.
There's a lot of Dutch people over there?
Oh, just a couple.
Get some wooden shoes out. My wife went to Calvin College, which is a school in Grand Rapids, and there's a lot of Dutch people that go to Calvin. So most of her friends were 6'2", 6'1", 6-foot blonde girls, and she's a little petite 5'1". So that's always been something funny. So, Josh, you are on the show today because this show and why I do it is to help fellow remodelers out. And when I was thinking, who should I have on the show coming up, you came to mind because I think there's a story to be told in how you went from in 2015 doing around $700,000 of revenue, not a lot of profit to show for it, working hard. You weren't slouching, were you?
No,
Okay.
Working my brains out.
Working my brains out at that, to fast forwarding a quick, 6-7+ years later and running a business that is well over $3 million in revenue and a whole lot more profitable. We could just say that, hey, here's somebody that did that. So it's doable. Everybody go out there and do it. But that wouldn't be very helpful. What we want to do is kind of unpack, how did you go from there to here, and what were some of the key things? And we're just going to kind of waltz our way through that and talk about some of those things. So that's what we're doing on the show today. But to start out, what I'd like you to do is just kind of introduce yourself, who you are, what you're about, and then I'll ask you some specific questions about your story.
So I'm Josh Nelson, Nelson Builders. Lived out here in Holland for the last 20+ years, back in the late 90s.
I hate to interrupt, but we have our first live comment. It's exciting.
Oh, right,
Jim McKenna just said, Tulip Mania. It is crazy, isn't it?
Come get your wooden shoes.
Okay. All right. But as you were saying.
So, no, I'm originally from the Philadelphia area. That's where I was born and raised, and met my lovely wife in college, which brings me out here. She was from this area. So moved out here in the late 90s.
Michigan's far superior to Pennsylvania, correct?
Oh, don't let my mother hear that, but yes.
Okay.
She'd slap me.
Okay.
But no, I do miss part of Pennsylvania as well. But I thoroughly enjoy living here in the great state of Michigan. And in 2001, I started Nelson Builders, and honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I thoroughly enjoyed carpentry. I'm a 5th generation carpenter.
Fifth?
Yeah, 5. Wow. 5 generations of carpenters. My dad, my grandfather, and it goes way back.
Wow.
So it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. My dad put a hammer in my hand when I was just 3 years old. Proficient with hand tools by the time I was 7. I really knew what I was doing because he would spend the time with me in the workshop.
So you knew what you were doing skill-wise, remodeling-wise,
Sure.
But as far as I'm starting this business up, and what prompted you to start the business? Were you working for another remodeler and said, doggone it, I can do it better?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
The Lord put enough thorns in my nest that he made me very uncomfortable in that with that former employer,
Hmm.
and said, you know what, I'm going to branch out on my own and do this.
Gotcha. So that was 2001.
Yeah. So early on, we had our nicks and bumps along the way. But all the while, I was hungry. I was always hungry for more, hungry for growth, hungry for a better way of doing it. And so I would immerse myself in books and magazines, trade journals, home building, fine home building, journal of like construction, things like that, to better my craft, thinking that was going to lead me to a more successful, better company. But I needed some coaching.
So it is interesting though, right? If I could just get better at doing the work, and I think a lot of people listening to this we're starting to wrap our head around it more and more of, it's wonderful to be wonderful at doing the work, and creating beautiful spaces for people to live in and remodel. But boy, we need to work on being just as proficient at the business side, at actually running the business. Oh, there's sales, there's marketing, there's financials, there's leadership, there's strategy, there's all of these other things. So you were kind of building piece by piece, maybe from the start, and eventually got yourself kind of off the tools a bit. And let's kind of fast forward to 2015. That's kind of when we connected, and when I started to get to know your business. So talk about kind of where your business was. Here you are 14 years into it. What had you gotten your business up to, and where were you at that time?
So I think I had maybe one or two carpenters at that point working for me. Like I said, we were doing around 700,000. I was still self-performing a lot of the work in the field. Honestly, running myself into the ground, just trying to do wear all the different hats and do all the different things that are required to run a successful business. But I needed some help. I needed to do it differently. I needed to think about it differently. So, Kyle, I think I met you at when we actually connected for our, hey, I'm going to sign up for your coaching. Was probably in Chicago at the Remodelers show there, that or Maryland, wherever it was held that year.
Yeah, I think that is how we connected. I think you reached out after that. I remember you being a very easy sell. No offense,
Sorry.
but I think it was like, I was probably starting to talk to you about, well, tell me about your profit and loss statement. What's your markup? How are you doing with job costing? Your sales process. Talk to me about that. And I think from studying and starting to get into the business side of things, I think you were starting to quickly realize that is the area that I need focus on. I need some accountability on. I need some direction. I need to rethink how I'm thinking about it. So I'll pause there, because anybody listening to this, whether you're able to hire a one-on-one coach, that's what Josh did in 2015, whether you are going to IBS or different trainings, whether you are listening to podcasts or purchasing, training courses from myself or other great coaches in the industry, realize that if you have this hunch that I've got to get a better handle on my numbers, I've got to figure out my sales process, I need to figure out how to be a better leader, you are on the right path. And you need to, sometimes it is hard, sometimes it is difficult, sometimes it's head scratching, sometimes you don't feel like you're making a lot of progress, sometimes you just want to go out into the field and swing the hammer instead of sit there and study your P&L. But you've got to lean into the business side more and hone your craft there. Cool. So that's kind of how we connected and kind of where your mindset was. And were you making much moolah? What was the situation on the moolah front in 2015?
I've always been somewhat profitable, but the numbers pale in comparison.
Yeah. So you were making a living, you were supporting family.
Well, that's what my mindset was really that I was just earning a wage. And I think that's true for a lot of people. A lot of builders who are fantastic craftsmen. They're excellent at what they do. And they're like, I can do it better than my boss. I'm going on my own. Mm-hmm. And so I think, that was certainly my situation when it came to my craft. I was all about excellence in my craft, but I was just charging to earn a living. I was charging enough for a wage, but who pays for all the insurance and the tools and the truck and the fuel and insurance and all the other things that go along? I didn't know how to, or I didn't know how to, or even have the confidence that, no, that's what a business requires, and to charge it.
And that mindset shift. Before we talk about the next step in that, we have other important business to take care of. Jim McKenna said, going back to another comment he made earlier, where in Philadelphia did you grow up? The man wants to know.
All right, so 45 minutes west of Philadelphia is a little town called Downingtown.
Hey.
So it's halfway between Lancaster and Philly.
You sure it's not Lancaster?
It's Lancaster.
Lancaster, okay. I actually know that because
Lancaster isn't from Lancaster.
I actually knew that it was Lancaster because I had a American Legion baseball tournament there when I was a senior in high school.
All right.
There you go. So, all right. So first few changes, maybe kind of talking about the financials. Let's talk about where you were and where you are and kind of the steps involved in really understanding your financials. Talk to me about some of the lessons you've learned there, whether it be the profit and loss statement, whether it be markup. How were you thinking about it? How are you thinking about it now? Share some of your thoughts and experiences there.
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Kyle. Yesterday, I was meeting with my accountant, more looking at some of the big picture things going on within our company, and even some of the other companies that we started last year, and all the different changes. So I'm just reviewing and looking at it from a high point of view. Mm-hmm. And we were actually discussing the same question, that in the early years, I looked at one number: how much is in the checking account?
Yeah.
And that was, to my shame, that's all I was doing. I wasn't looking at any KPIs. I wasn't looking at the cost of goods sold, or different margins, or ratios, or any of that. It was okay.
Would you say to your shame? I mean, that was a little forceful, but yes, to your shame.
Well,
don't beat yourself up too much.
No, but at the same time, if you're going to be successful, you have to know your numbers.
Bingo. So when I put a profit and loss statement in front of you now, what are some of the things you're looking at?
My first thing, my go-to is my cost of goods sold. How well did we produce the job, or not? Did we hit our target numbers?
Our expected gross profit and cost of goods sold.
Right. So did we hit that number? And then, right, what is our overall expenses within our company? How are we doing with those? Which leads us to the big, most important number, is net profit. How are we doing? Are we actually gaining? Are we a profitable company? Because if we're not profitable, we will not survive.
There you have it, folks. Or if you have a measly net profit, you're putting in so much time, effort, and energy for a measly net profit. Now, with your profit and loss statement, a couple of things that I've seen from you is just, one, continually asking questions until you fully understand what it is we're looking at. That is a trait that is very important. By the way, when financials are a little murky or new to you, or just not your strongest suit, you have to keep revisiting it, reminding yourself of, what am I looking at here? What about this? What about that? And the level of, I remember there was a point a few years in where, instead of me kind of quizzing you, you were already kind of answering the questions before I could even ask them. And I thought, ooh, somebody's starting to really pay attention to this and enjoy looking at it. So Josh, what you're talking about there is paying attention to your job costing and looking at my cost of goods sold, and yes, my gross profit, comparing that to my markup. Do I have slippage or grippage? Getting excited about that, interested in that, paying close attention to that. You were talking about overhead expenses, something that I think you have done that's been a very positive thing, and maybe also, and I'll have you speak to this, maybe also a little bit of a challenging thing or a determinant, is how low you've kept your overhead expenses as a percentage of your overall sales. You've run a pretty lean business. True or false?
True. Very
True
true.
or false? Yeah. So what have been some of the pros of that? And then what are a couple of the cons of running a pretty lean business from an overhead expenses standpoint?
So a conversation I had with my accountant many years ago, this was back when I was using my garage, my 2-stall garage at home as my shop. And then the little bonus room above it was my office.
Mm-hmm.
So my accountant told me, you ought to be charging for, that type of space in your estimates to your clients. And I'm thinking, well, it doesn't cost me anything to run my company there. He's like, well, think about it this way. Do you ever want to grow? Do you ever want to move out of your home? Where, to be true, most of us builders operate out of our own homes. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd like to grow. I definitely want to move out. He's like, well, you'll never be able to afford it unless you start charging for it now. And so I was able to build up a little bit of a nest egg as I started charging for that. The building that we're in currently, we lease. We've been leasing this place for the last 6 years. It's a nice commercial space, but again, we've been charging appropriately for it. All the while, we're building a new building, and this fall we'll be able to move in and into a space that we own.
Yeah, and people haven't seen your face too often, but if you've seen Josh closely, you'll see a few more gray hairs popping up due to running a very busy business while also building this building and undertaking that, and I guess also having another child mixed in there too. There's going to happen. Jim had a question. Did you experience any inner turmoil making the shift, kind of charging craftsman wages to a business and increasing that pricing? Any inner turmoil in that? And when we say charging for it, the way that you started charging for rent, the way that you started to charge for some of those business expenses by increasing your stinking markup, right?
Yeah.
So any inner turmoil on that?
That's a great term. And yes, it was. I forget what conference I was at, but one of the instructors said, when you go to deliver the number, when you go to talk to your client about what's the all-in number, what's the big number for that project, it ought to make you feel a little sick about, like, I don't want to tell the client this number. If the reality is that project is 60,000, why in the world would I tell him 40? Because I want him to buy from me, because I want him to like me. And it's the head trash that we have to get rid of. And for me, it was the confidence of knowing, no, this is what it costs. This is what I'm going to charge for it. We are worth it because we're delivering a quality product and experience and a system that is a fair situation for everyone.
So your markup's gone from where to where to where to where to where? How's that gravitated over the years?
Oh, that's a fun one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So early days, we would put it right on the bottom of the estimate, 5% overhead or 5% profit and 7% overhead.
Literally, that's it.
Literally, that was it.
Okay.
We would play with the numbers from the subs a little bit, maybe mark them up a few percents, but yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Then where'd you go?
That has grown, and I've had people like you, Kyle, and others pushing me and helping to grow me. Yeah. And so now we're at a 1.72.
Yeah.
So
right. So yep. And it was just, I think it's important for people to hear of, like, a key way that you grow and become more profitable, wait for it, is to charge more.
It's a novel idea, pal.
It's a little shocking, but you can make more money if you charge more money, AKA if you're charging a 1.30 markup and you start going, doggone it, I listen to Josh and Kyle, and I've listened to Kyle talk about it all the time. I'm going to do a 1.40 on these next projects. And then you go out and sell them. Those projects have more potential for profit. I say more potential because we could still botch it and have slippage, but it's going to be more profitable than those ones at 1.30. And Josh, you're kind of, okay, I'm going to test the waters at 1.30. This is nuts. I was charging 5% and 7%. I'm going to do 1.30. I'm scared. I'm going to do it. Wait, they signed. And I'm going to do 1.35, 1.40. And you've been very steady like that. You added, another overhead position, let's say an office manager position. How are we going to pay for that? We need to increase our markup in order to cover that cost. Sometimes growth, top line growth of revenue can also help us, pay for increases in overhead expenses. But oftentimes, if I'm going to spend another $60,000 in overhead expenses, I need to cover that by increasing my markup. And you've just been steady at doing that while also improving your sales skills. And I kind of want to go there next if we could. When it comes to the sales process side, what were some of the key things as you look back? Okay, this and this were probably the two biggest things that I did to help me improve my sales process, my confidence in selling, being able to sell at a higher markup. What were a few of those things as you kind of look back at things?
When I started, I was relying on technical expertise. I always looked at my role when I was in the client's home to sell that project was to really explain to them and educate them on what they were buying in a very straightforward, honest and open way. And I think people really resonate with that. But I needed a whole lot more than just being a craftsman or somebody that is a nerd when it comes to what I did. Mm-hmm. They needed more than that. And creating a process, this is how we work. Those 5 words, very powerful. It tells the client, hey, this guy knows the end from the beginning, and he's got a path to take me there. And people want to be guided along the way. People want that, to have their hand held and to have a clear written process of how you go from a concept to construction phase. That's really makes a huge difference.
You see that as being a big factor in your growth and in moving your business forward?
Very big. Very big. Charging for design. That was one of the greatest pieces of head trash I've ever had. I can't charge for design. I have to give free estimates. Nobody else does it. It was the biggest load of junk in my head when it came to my business, and charging for design has been extraordinarily successful. I would never go back. So anybody listening to this podcast today, please.
Jeez, Josh, don't yell at my listen. Don't be yelling at my listeners. Jeez, settle down over there. But we're talking your story from where you were to where you are, and we unpacked the majority of financials, and we talked about a bunch of different facets of that. Sure. And the reason I went to the sales process next is I would agree that this was probably the other biggest area that really took you from here to there. Is one, very clearly, this is how we work. Showing people that you've got a process. It's not your first rodeo. It's been very, very helpful in boosting your confidence and bringing people across to being paying projects. And then charging for design and development. Once you started doing that, the genius in it is all of a sudden now you're not chasing every project that comes in, which protects your time. You're able to go deeper and into more planning up front. It improves your closing percentage. There's this ripple effect that does. And the fact that you kind of were like, listen, if you guys are not doing that, please take this seriously. One, you can buy my course called Charging for Design and Development. It's a great course. Go to remodelersontherise.com. See how I did that? That was pretty smooth.
That was a good one.
But it goes step by step through. And that's what the process that you went through to build that into your business. And that has been a huge factor in things.
Unbelievable.
I like that. Do you feel like you are as good of a businessman as you feel like you are a craftsman? There's a question from an audience member.
That's a tough one, Jim. I don't know. I have lots to learn. I want to be a student. I want to always be learning, always be growing, always be expanding my understanding of my company, my business, how it works. This whole idea of leadership is really resonating loudly with me
Yeah.
as of lately, as I'm growing my team and understanding the importance of just solid leadership is
Yeah.
key.
So you know what Jim's getting at there. If I tweaked his question, and instead of saying, "Do you feel like you are as good a businessman as you feel like you are a craftsman?" If I tweaked it and said, "Do you feel like you're a better businessman now than you were 24 months ago?" What would you answer?
exponentially.
Right? Are you better? Are you as good a craftsman as you are now as you were 24 months ago? Well, maybe not so much there.
No, I'm actually getting worse.
Right? So
I'm not as good as I was.
yeah. So, we're telling the story related to all of the financials, which is huge, the sales process, which is huge. And, once you get to where you're at now, which is a pretty strong, stable business, you've invested in marketing from, the website to search engine optimization to creating videos to testimonials to Google reviews, staying in touch with previous clients. You've done that. When you have the financials organized, when you have the sales process and those 5 powerful words, this is how we work, organize. When you have the marketing going, you get to where you've been for the last year, 18, 24 months, and where you see you need to go in the future. And it all centers around building that team out. The team and building the pieces of the team, hiring office manager position, getting somebody into more of a project manager role, continuing to hire, team in the field,
Yep.
more of an assistant even type role. Those have all also been key, but you're seeing how your role is now shifting to one of leadership. Does that excite you? Does that scare you? How have you been approaching it so far?
I would say it does both. Wading into different waters. Leadership has always been right. If you're going to be the owner, you're going to be a leader of it,
Yeah.
Whether you're a good leader or not. But isn't that true? Why we all left our former employers?
Yeah.
Is we didn't look for a new career, we looked for new leadership.
Yeah.
So, right, it starts with the owner, the principals of the company to provide good direction for their people, so that they can feel engaged, they can feel empowered to be able to do their job and to have the tools and the guidance to do it well without being micromanaged.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say if I can speak just from our relationship, it's an area that it's just interesting hearing your story kind of as we're going through it and you sharing some things and me thinking about it and sharing some things. The way I'm seeing it is like from a financial standpoint and understanding numbers, you were at like a 2 out of 10. And then it moved to 4 out of 10, then 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And, I'd argue that you're kind of 8 or 9 out of 10 as far as your skill level, 10 being I'm really, really proficient and rock solid at this. There's been growth there. Sales process, 2 up to 4, up to 6, up to 8. Marketing and understanding that side of things, job costing. If you really tracked it and measured it, there's just been a lot of growth. And on the leadership side, you've gone from, let's say I'm just kind of starting where we're at of like, 2 or 3. And I think you've got it up to, 6, up to 7. You're paying attention to realizing, okay, I've got to really be paying attention. Nope. I'll give you a solid 7 just to keep your spirits up. And I think actually you would agree that you're like, no, I've got more to do, but you're doing You're doing one-on-one meetings. You're realizing I've got to make time to take one of my guys out for breakfast or lunch. I've got to pay attention to how my team is feeling, how their stress level is, how their workload is. I've got to talk to them about training. You've been putting people through, the NARI lead carpenter side of things.
Yeah.
You've been investing in training. A couple weeks ago, you listened to that final 5%, and you're like, I put my guys in front of that little webinar you did, Kyle, and the final 5%. We talked about how we're going to, plan of how we're going to close projects. So I'm seeing definite improvement there. And I think one of the fun things about leadership is that it's hard to get to an 8. It's hard to get to a 9. It's really hard to get to a 10. But it's interesting as you grow your business and you start checking off different things. Okay, I'm pretty proficient here. I got this in pretty good place. That leadership one turns into quite a big undertaking. Somebody just said, I want to be like Josh when I grow up. Now we don't have their name next to it, but we got a smiley face next to that. Doggone it, I do as well. I want to be Josh when I grow up. Although having that newborn at home when your youngest was what?
11.
11, and now we got a newborn at home. I mean, I love the idea of that, but I don't want to be you for like the next 6 months or so. Once the baby's fully sleeping, then I'll take your role.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, Kyle. Our 4-month-old is easier to wrangle than our 2 going off to college.
No. What, bigger kids, bigger problems?
Imagine that.
Oh man. The person that wrote that was L-Dub. That was Laurel Winkle. You met Laurel Winkle at the VIP Club event. Her and her husband, back left corner from out west.
Yeah.
She builds. There you go. She wants to be like you when she grows up. Interesting. So I think what we were trying to capture here in this story are just some of those key things that have kind of taken you from here to there. What else would you add, or when you think about kind of your story of where you were and where you're at, what else would you kind of add in as far as being other keys that you've experienced?
For me, my faith has been a key element in all of it. You know, the road of owning a company and wearing all the hats and hitting the deadlines and the hiring, the firing, the problems that come up along the way with clients that you have to deal with. You're fighting, you got a fireman's hat, you got all different types of things to go on. Plus you have, normal home life with all the ups and downs of kids and schedules and school and all the things that you go on. You can very quickly become overwhelmed. And to have a faith that can help focus your energy and to give you peace. Even there's nothing peaceful going on around you, but when you can have that peace, that has been a comfort to me.
Love that.
Through it all.
Love that. Yeah, and one of the reasons that Josh and I have enjoyed working with each other, I mean, I've enjoyed working with you. I think the feeling's mutual. Is, you know,
pick on me.
Huh?
So you pick on me.
I mean, you really think you're an 8? What, should I have said 9 on leadership? You're a solid 7, and that's good.
Maybe a 6.5.
7. I'll give you 7 because I've seen actual thing. You know what I've seen on leadership. To go back to that, and then I'll share what I was going to say on leadership is. There was a little bit of a time there where you were saying things like, you know, I'm just not that great a leader. It's just not something I'm that skilled at. It just doesn't come natural to me. You were saying stuff like that. I don't hear that anymore because you've realized, wait a minute, I have to be a leader. I have to improve this. I have to continue to get better at this. I can't make excuses that, I need to do this better. Or if only I had more natural inclination for it. All of that's in the rearview mirror. And that's when you've been really embracing, I think, some of the stepping forward in leaderships. You're on the path. Solid 6.5.
Thanks, Kyle.
But one of the things, and you mentioned your faith, and you mentioned just, you know, I think we're at similar ages and stages of, you know, wanting to be good husbands, and we've got little kids and big kids and men of faith, and you know, okay, what do I do with hobbies, and okay, I want to be involved in leadership maybe through the Home Builder Association, and that whole balancing act. And I think that's something that we all need to remind ourselves that, yes, understanding the financial is super important. Sales process, marketing, leadership, all of these business related things are very important. But also we have to step back and look at how the work-life balance is going. How our mind always on business? Are we able to kind of turn it off? And how do we improve that? How do we set boundaries up? How do we make sure we're making priority for time for date night with our wives? And you know, sometimes there's action steps of what was the one here? It was within the last 6 or 10 months. And Angie, your wife, you came home and had an idea, and she saw right through your idea and said, "Did you have a meeting with Kyle today?"
She did. She did. I forget what the activity was.
Yeah.
But
you know what it was? It was you trying to stinking balance everything. You're building this building, which is a very, very cool thing, but it's a very demanding thing. And you were wanting to do that. And I remember what it was, where you had to work on a stinking Saturday, and it was kind of consecutive Saturdays. And you're like, Kyle, I've got to find some time for my wife. And I think what it was you were going to take her out for a lovely breakfast and brunch and some time, and then you were going to go to the job site. I think we worked on some of the wording and verbiage of that.
One of her favorite things to do is to go out for breakfast on Saturday morning.
Love that. So Jim is working on some phrases here. That's the switch I'm looking for. A craftsman of business. Ooh, a craftsman of life. Now that's a dovetail joint. Look at this guy go.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, that's cool. Excellent. So
Great.
so I would say that was a helpful tour of your story. I appreciate you sharing it. You're going to continue to go and improve. I have no doubt. Let's end with this way of I'm going to share kind of okay if you heard nothing else in what we just shared, make sure you hear this. And if you could do it similar, like, if you take nothing else away from this or from hearing some of these ideas, here's what I would want to emphasize. And I would say the biggest takeaway for me, hopefully I don't steal yours, is this idea of taking the business side of the business more seriously, of realizing if I'm going to be successful at this whole remodeling thing, I have to be a very successful business person. And yes, it's amazing that you and others still have all of these skills of doing the work, but that needs to take a back seat, and you really need to lean into becoming an excellent business person. So that to me came loud and clear through some of what we covered. So I wanted to highlight that. What would you say is kind of a final, if you heard nothing else, hear this?
I would say stay hungry to learn. Whatever it is you want to learn, stay hungry for learning. Whether you need to improve in your craft or your business, and I would say your business, the business side of things, should absolutely trump what you're doing in the field. Because it doesn't matter how good you're in the field, if your business isn't running well in the office, it will fail. But to piggyback on that is don't try to do it in a vacuum. Reading books, that's great, but become part of a community where whether it's the Home Builders Association, NARI, or other type of organizations where you can be part of. You can rub shoulders with other builders and realize that you're not the only one with these same struggles.
Yeah.
And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's one of the great things that benefited me, is that when I came to coaching with you, Kyle, is that you already had a whole lot of these wheels already made.
Yep.
And I didn't have to make them myself. So don't go it alone. Be part of a community and be a hungry learner.
Love it. Thank you, my friend. Thus concludes your first live show. It was fun.
This was fun.
Good. All right. Now get to work. You got a lot of work to do. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.